It was a quiet evening in a small town surrounded by green fields and old trees. The air was calm and the sky was filled with soft stars. A young woman named Mira lived in a small house near the edge of the town. She loved her simple life. Every evening she sat on her porch with a cup of tea and listened to the crickets singing in the garden. That night everything felt peaceful until a sudden sound broke the silence. It was not the sound of an animal or the wind. It was something different, something strange. It came from her backyard, deep near the old wooden fence. Mira froze for a moment. She listened again, trying to understand what it could be. It came again, a soft humming sound mixed with a faint metallic tone. It sounded almost like a machine. But no one in her neighborhood had any machines that could make such a noise. Mira stood up and walked slowly toward the back door. Her heart began to beat faster, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. She took her small flashlight from the kitchen and stepped outside. The backyard looked calm at first. The garden lights glowed softly and the flowers moved gently in the breeze. But the sound was still there, hidden under the wind. It was coming from the far corner of the yard where the grass grew thicker. Mira walked closer, her steps quiet on the wet ground. When she reached the fence, she noticed something strange. The ground seemed disturbed, as if someone had dug a hole and covered it again. The sound was coming from right beneath that spot. Mira pointed her flashlight at the ground. She could see a small round patch where the grass looked burned, like it had been touched by something very hot. Her mind filled with questions. Was it a broken pipe, a hidden speaker, or maybe some kind of device left behind by workers? None of it made sense. Mira decided to mark the spot with a small stone so she could check again in the morning. She went back inside her house, but she could not sleep. The sound had stopped now, but her thoughts kept spinning. The next morning, sunlight filled her kitchen. Birds were singing and everything seemed normal again. But Mira could not ignore what she had heard. She went outside with a small shovel to take a closer look. The ground was still warm even though the night had been cool. She started digging carefully. The earth was soft and smelled fresh. After a few minutes, her shovel hit something hard. She bent down and brushed away the soil with her hands. A shiny surface appeared. It looked like metal, but not like any she had seen before. It was smooth and silver, reflecting the sunlight. There were no marks, no rust, and no signs of wear. Mira tapped it gently with the handle of the shovel. It made a hollow sound, almost like there was space inside. Her curiosity grew stronger. She dug around the edges to uncover more of it. Soon she realized it was not just a small piece, but part of a larger object buried under the ground. It looked round, almost like a half circle. She could not see the end of it. Mira stood up and looked around. No one else was outside. She thought about calling someone, maybe her neighbor or the local police, but she stopped herself. What would she even say? That she found a strange silver object under her backyard? They might think it was a water tank or an old container. She decided to keep it a secret for now until she knew what it was. She spent the rest of the day cleaning around the backyard, but her eyes kept returning to the hidden object. In the evening, she sat near it and thought deeply. The shape of the object looked too perfect, too smooth, as if it had been made with advanced tools. Mira had never seen anything like it before. Later that night, she heard the same sound again. This time it was louder and clearer. It came from the same spot. Mira rushed outside, but when she reached the hole, she noticed something unbelievable. The silver surface was glowing faintly with a blue light. The light moved slowly in circles like ripples in water. Mira knelt down and stared at it. The glow was not harsh but soft and warm. She felt a strange calmness as she looked at it. Then she noticed something even more surprising. Small shapes began to appear on the metal surface. They looked like symbols or letters, but not in any language she had ever seen. The symbols shone for a few seconds and then faded away. Her mind raced with questions. Was it a device? Was it something from space or an old secret experiment? The idea sounded crazy, but she could not explain what she was seeing. She wanted to touch it, but decided to wait. She went inside and wrote everything down in her notebook so she would not forget any detail. That night, she barely slept. Her mind was full of wonder and confusion. In the morning, she decided to visit her friend Arun, who worked at the town library. He was a calm and curious person who loved history and science. Mira trusted him more than anyone else. When she told Arun about the strange object, he listened carefully. He did not laugh or doubt her. Instead, his eyes filled with curiosity. He asked her many questions about the color, shape, and sound. After hearing everything, he said he wanted to see it himself. They both went to Mira's house in the afternoon. The sunlight fell directly on the backyard, making the silver surface shine brightly. Aaron knelt down and examined it. He touched it gently and felt its smooth texture. He looked amazed. He said it was not like any known metal he had ever read about. It was light but strong, almost unreal. Aaron suggested that they should not tell anyone yet. He thought it might be something important, and they needed to study it first. Mira agreed. They decided to dig around it carefully the next day to uncover more of the object. As the evening came, Mira stood near her window and watched the backyard. The blue glow started again, soft and beautiful under the dark sky. She felt both fear and excitement. She did not know what she had found, but deep in her heart she felt that it was not just an ordinary object. It was something that had been waiting there for a reason, something that might hold a secret far greater than anyone could imagine. She looked up at the stars and whispered, softly to herself, that maybe this discovery would change everything she had ever known about the world. It was only the beginning. The next morning, Mira woke up earlier than usual. The sound of birds filled the air, but her mind was still focused on what she had found in her backyard. The memory of the glowing silver object was fresh in her mind. She quickly finished her breakfast and waited for Aaron to arrive. She knew today could be important. When Aaron came, he carried a small backpack with notebooks, gloves, and a camera. He smiled as he greeted Mira and said that he had been thinking about the object all night. Together, they went to the backyard where the half-buried metallic surface still rested quietly under the soft sunlight. Aaron knelt down and examined it again. He brushed away more of the soil, revealing more of the shiny surface. The circular shape continued deeper, wider than they had thought. Aaron carefully placed his hand on the metal and felt a faint vibration under his fingers. It was almost like the object was alive, humming softly with hidden energy. Mira watched closely as Aaron took notes. He said the design looked advanced and not man-made. There were no bolts, seams, or marks of welding. It was made from a single piece, perfectly smooth from every angle. They both wondered how such a thing could be buried under her backyard. As they continued working, Aaron used a small brush to clean the surface. Suddenly, he noticed something faint appearing near the edge. It looked like small patterns, almost invisible under the dirt. When he cleaned it more, the shapes became clear. It was the same type of glowing symbols Mira had seen the night before. The blue light appeared once again, bright but soft. Mira and Aaron stepped back for a moment, amazed by the sight. The symbols moved slowly across the surface as if the object was reacting to their presence. Mira whispered that maybe it could sense them. Aaron nodded, saying that it might not be just a machine but something more intelligent. They watched as the symbols stopped moving and stayed still in one place. Aaron took a photo and drew them in his notebook. He said he would try to find out if they matched any known ancient symbols or languages. Mira was amazed by how calm he remained even when something unbelievable was happening before their eyes. Later that afternoon, Aaron left to visit the library while Mira stayed home. He wanted to check through old records and books. Mira promised to stay near the object and watch if anything else happened. As hours passed, Mira sat in the garden chair with her notebook open. The sun was slowly going down. The air became cool and the shadows grew longer. She felt a strange comfort sitting near the glowing object. It was silent now, but she could still feel a faint hum like a heartbeat beneath the ground. When night came, the glow started again, brighter than before. Mira felt the need to get closer. She knelt near it, her eyes fixed on the soft blue light. Then something unexpected happened. The symbols appeared again, but this time they moved faster, forming a pattern that looked like a circle of light. Inside that circle, new shapes started to form. They looked like stars and lines connecting them. It looked like a map. Mira gasped softly. She realized it was not just random shapes. It was a star map, showing several points connected in a specific pattern. She quickly took out her phone and snapped pictures. The glowing light slowly faded after a few seconds, leaving her in quiet darkness once more. Mira sat there, her heart racing. What could it mean? Was this object trying to show her something? Maybe it was a message, a signal, or even a guide to somewhere far beyond Earth. The next morning, Aaron returned with several books. He looked tired but excited. He had found something that made him think deeply. In an old book about ancient civilizations, there was a small drawing that looked very similar to the symbols they had seen. It came from a stone tablet found hundreds of years ago in another country. The meaning of the symbols was never understood, but some historians believed they belonged to an ancient culture that had mysterious knowledge about the stars. Mira was surprised. How could the same symbols appear both on a tablet from ancient times and on the silver object buried in her backyard? It felt impossible, yet here it was. Aaron said that maybe the object had been here for a very long time, long before people built houses and towns. Maybe it was buried by time, waiting to be discovered. They decided to dig deeper around the object to see if it was connected to something else. They worked carefully, removing layers of soil. After a while, they noticed a small opening at the side of the metal surface. It looked like a narrow slit, almost like a door. Aaron tried to shine his flashlight inside, but it was too dark to see anything. They could feel a cool breeze coming from the opening, which meant there was empty space inside. Mira touched the surface near the slit and the blue glow appeared again, brighter than ever. Suddenly, the opening widened silently, revealing a hollow space below. Both of them stepped back in surprise. Inside, they could see a smooth tunnel leading downward. The air coming from it was clean, not dusty, which meant it was not just an old hole in the ground. It felt new, like it had been waiting for them. Mira looked at Aaron with wide eyes. She wanted to go inside, but Aaron stopped her. He said it might be dangerous until they knew more about it. They decided to bring some equipment and lights before exploring. As the night came again, Mira could not sleep. She stood by her window, staring at the glowing circle in her backyard. The blue light was steady, calm, almost welcoming. She wondered who or what had made this thing. The next day, they gathered tools and stronger lights. When they returned to the hole, the blue glow was gone, but the opening remained. They climbed down carefully one after another. The walls of the tunnel were smooth and silver, shining faintly even without the light. It felt like walking inside a machine made of living metal. After walking for a few minutes, they reached a small round chamber. In the center of it stood a crystal-like sphere floating a few inches above a silver base. The sphere was clear, but inside it, small lights moved like tiny stars. Mira and Aaron stood quietly, filled with wonder. The chamber was silent except for a low hum that came from the sphere. Mira slowly reached out her hand. As her fingers came close, the sphere began to glow softly, showing images inside it. The lights formed pictures of stars, planets, and strange structures that looked like floating cities. Then they saw an image of Earth from space. Underneath it, a line of symbols appeared, the same ones from the surface above. Mira whispered that it was showing them something important. Aaron nodded and said it might be a message, maybe from another world or an ancient civilization that had visited Earth long ago. They stayed there for a long time, trying to understand the images. The sphere slowly dimmed after a while and returned to its calm, floating state. They decided to leave the chamber and return later with more tools to study it carefully. When they came back to the surface, the morning sun was rising. The light touched the silver surface, making it shine beautifully. Mira stood silently, looking at it with awe. She felt that her discovery was much more than a secret. It was something that could change everything people knew about history and life itself. She didn't realize that this was only the beginning of a journey that would soon take her far beyond what she had ever imagined. The morning sun spread a warm light across the garden, but Mira's thoughts were far from calm. She kept looking at the silver surface in her backyard, remembering the glowing sphere deep underground. The pictures inside it were still fresh in her mind, the stars, the strange cities, and the image of Earth floating in space. She could not stop wondering what all of it meant. Aaron arrived soon after with a small bag filled with tools, notebooks, and food. He smiled at Mira and said that he could not sleep the whole night. His mind was full of questions about the sphere and the tunnel. He believed they had discovered something that could rewrite human history. Mira nodded, feeling both excitement and responsibility. They both knew this discovery was too big to share carelessly. They decided to go back down the tunnel together. This time, Aaron brought small lamps and a device that could record temperature and energy readings. As they stepped into the silver passage again, they felt the same quiet hum surrounding them. The air was cool and clean, and the walls reflected the light like smooth mirrors. When they reached the round chamber, the crystal sphere floated calmly above its silver base. It was as beautiful as before, glowing softly like a living heart. Aaron placed his equipment near it and began taking readings. The device beeped quietly as it detected strange patterns of energy. The numbers did not match any normal reading from natural sources. Mira walked around the chamber, studying the walls. She noticed small patterns engraved in the metal, forming long lines that connected back to the sphere. It looked like a network of thin veins spreading through the walls. She touched one of the lines gently, and a faint light ran through it like flowing water. Aaron watched in surprise as the sphere started to respond. The lights inside it began to move again, forming shapes and symbols. Mira stepped back and both of them watched as the symbols rearranged into images. This time the images were different. They showed people, tall, graceful figures standing beside strange machines. Their faces were calm and their eyes looked bright, almost glowing. They stood on a platform that overlooked a shining city surrounded by stars. Mira whispered softly that maybe these figures were the ones who made the object. Aaron nodded. He thought they might have come from another world long ago. He said it was possible that they had visited Earth and left this behind. Mira listened carefully. The idea sounded unreal, but the proof was floating right in front of her eyes. The images continued to change. They now showed a large ship flying through space. It moved near planets, through clouds of light, and then toward a small blue world, Earth. The next image showed the ship entering the planet's atmosphere and landing in a wide green valley. The figures stepped out of it, carrying the same kind of crystal sphere they were now seeing. Aaron realized that the object in Mira's backyard might be a part of that ancient ship. Maybe it had crashed or been hidden for reasons they could not yet understand. Mira felt chills run through her arms. The sphere was showing them a memory, a message from the past left by another civilization. As the images faded, the sphere began to glow brighter than before. Suddenly, a soft voice filled the chamber. It was not loud, but it was clear and calm. The words were not in any known language, yet Mira could somehow feel their meaning inside her mind. The voice spoke about peace, knowledge, and the importance of unity. It said the crystal held memories of a civilization that had once traveled across the stars, searching for other forms of life. Mira stood quietly, her heart filled with wonder. Arun listened closely, writing down every detail he could. The voice continued, saying that their world had faced great challenges, and that they had hidden their knowledge across the universe, waiting for another intelligent race to find it. The message ended with a single phrase that Mira could clearly understand. "You are not alone." After the voice faded, silence filled the chamber again. Mira and Aaron looked at each other, both lost for words. They knew what they had just witnessed was beyond imagination. It was a message from another world, a bridge between two civilizations. They stayed there for a while, letting the meaning of those words sink in. Aaron suggested they should document everything carefully before telling anyone. He feared that people might not believe them or that someone might try to take the object away. Mira agreed. She trusted him completely and decided they would study it together before involving others. For the next few days, they spent most of their time exploring the tunnel and observing the sphere. Each day the sphere showed them new images, maps of distant galaxies, glowing patterns of light, and information that looked like scientific data. Arun worked hard to record everything while Mira kept watching for any changes. One evening, while Arun was reviewing his notes, Mira noticed something unusual on the wall of the chamber. A small part of the silver surface looked different, as if it could open. She placed her hand on it, and the wall moved silently, revealing a small compartment inside. Inside the compartment, there was a small metallic cube. It was shiny and had the same glowing symbols as the sphere. Mira carefully lifted the cube. It felt light and warm, almost as if it was alive. When she placed it near the sphere, the two objects began to glow together, their lights blending into a single bright color. The room filled with a gentle vibration, and suddenly, a new image appeared on the wall. It was a map of Earth showing several glowing points across the continents. Aaron realized that these points might be other hidden objects like this one, buried in different parts of the world. They looked at each other with excitement. The discovery was far bigger than they had imagined. The object in Mira's backyard was not the only one. There were more, and together they might reveal a complete story about the ancient visitors. They decided to focus on understanding the cube first. Aaron placed it in a protective box and took it to his small workshop to study. He used gentle tools to scan it and found that it emitted a weak signal. He said the signal might be connected to the other locations shown on the map. The next day, something strange happened. When Mira went to the backyard, she noticed that the silver surface had slightly changed. The glow was dimmer, and the sound she used to hear had grown faint. It was as if the object was resting or waiting. She touched it softly and felt a small pulse like it was aware of her. She whispered that she would find the others, that she would continue the journey it had started. At that moment, she felt a strange peace in her heart. She knew her life had changed forever. What had started as a strange noise in the night had now become the beginning of a great mystery, one that could change how humanity saw the world and its place in the universe. As the stars appeared in the sky that night, Mira sat on her porch thinking about everything she had learned. She realized that her discovery carried not just answers but also a responsibility. She and Arun were now the keepers of something ancient and powerful, a truth that connected two worlds separated by time and space. She looked at the glowing silver surface one last time before going inside. The blue light flickered softly as if it was listening to her thoughts. Mira smiled quietly, feeling that this was not the end but only the next step in a much larger story that was still waiting to unfold. The morning sun touched Mira's window, filling her room with light. She woke up with the same thought that had followed her every night since the discovery. The silver object, the glowing sphere, and now the cube. Everything felt like pieces of a larger puzzle. She looked out at the backyard where the surface still shined faintly. It looked peaceful, but she knew something powerful rested beneath it. Soon after breakfast, Arun arrived again. He looked excited and carried his notebook filled with notes and drawings. He told Mira that he had been studying the cube all night. It reacted to certain sounds, almost as if it could understand tones or vibrations. When he placed it near a speaker and played soft frequencies, the cube's symbols would glow brighter and change color. Mira listened carefully, amazed by how the cube seemed alive. Arun explained that the cube might be a key, a kind of device that could connect or unlock the other places shown on the map. He believed each glowing point on the map represented another object hidden somewhere on Earth. Together, they formed a network that could share knowledge between locations. They decided to look closer at the map that had appeared on the chamber wall. The image had shown glowing spots over the continents, but they needed to know exactly where those places were. Arun used his camera to take detailed photos of the projection and then compared them with a world map. After several hours of study, they managed to identify 3 main points that seemed to match real locations, one near the mountains in South America, another near the deserts of Africa, and the third deep in the oceans near Asia. Each point seemed carefully placed, forming a pattern across the planet. Mira looked at the pattern thoughtfully and said it almost looked like a signal being sent around the Earth. Arun nodded and said maybe the objects were made to communicate with each other through energy or light. He believed the cube might be able to awaken them. The idea made Mira both curious and nervous. She knew this discovery could change human understanding forever, but she also feared what could happen if it fell into the wrong hands. Arun agreed that they needed to move carefully. For now, they decided to keep everything secret and continue studying quietly. That night, Mira sat near her window watching the stars. The sky looked beautiful, and she wondered if someone, somewhere among those stars, had sent this message long ago. Maybe they had wanted to share knowledge, not power. She felt a sense of peace thinking that the message they left behind was one of unity and learning. The next morning, something unexpected happened. When Mira went to check the backyard, she saw that the silver surface had begun to change. The glow that had dimmed before was now stronger. Lines of blue light spread across the metal, forming the same star map they had seen inside the chamber. The cube, which Arun had left near the surface, was also glowing in rhythm with the pattern. Mira quickly called Arun, who rushed over with his tools. When he arrived, they watched in silence as the lines of light moved slowly across the surface, connecting and forming new shapes. Arun recorded everything carefully. He said the object was activating again, maybe because the cube had reconnected with it. The light grew brighter for a moment and then faded, leaving behind a new mark on the surface, a circle filled with unknown symbols. Arun traced them on paper and said they looked similar to an ancient language used by several civilizations, but mixed with unknown signs. Mira said maybe it was meant for them to find, as if the object was teaching them step by step. Arun agreed and said the object seemed to respond to emotions as much as actions. He noticed it glowed more brightly when they were calm or curious, but stayed quiet when they were afraid. It was almost as if it could sense their feelings. Later that day, Arun suggested that they visit the nearest point on the map to see if another object might really exist there. Mira hesitated at first, but then agreed. They decided that Aaron would make the trip while she stayed to observe the backyard in case something changed again. 2 days later, Aaron left for the mountains shown on the map. He carried the cube with him in a safe case, promising to call Mira every few hours. Mira watched him leave with mixed emotions. She trusted him, but she also felt a deep connection with the silver object and the glowing sphere beneath her home. During the days he was gone, Mira continued to check the backyard. The blue lines would appear at night, forming shapes and fading again as if communicating silently. One evening she saw something new, a thin beam of light rising slowly from the center of the surface toward the sky. It was faint but clear, reaching high until it disappeared among the stars. Mira stood there in wonder. She realized the beam was not random. It was pointing in the direction Aaron had gone. She quickly wrote everything in her notebook. It felt as if the object was guiding him, connecting him to the other location. When Arun called the next morning, he sounded amazed. He said he had reached the mountains and found an unusual area marked by smooth stones arranged in a perfect circle. The ground in the middle of the circle felt warm, even though the air around was cold. He placed the cube on the ground and the symbols on it began to glow again. At that same moment, Mira saw the silver surface in her backyard shine brightly. She knew the two places were connected. The objects were waking each other up. Aaron said the ground near him began to open slightly, revealing a metal surface just like the one in Mira's yard. He could see faint lights and patterns under the dust. He promised to take pictures and study the place carefully before touching anything. Mira listened closely, her heart full of excitement. They had confirmed that the map was real. There were more of these hidden structures around the world, and they were part of a greater design. That night, Mira sat outside with her notebook, thinking about how everything had changed. Only a week ago, she was living a simple life in a quiet town. Now she was part of something that could change what people knew about history, science, and even life itself. While she was lost in thought, she noticed the silver surface glowing again. This time the light formed words in clear shapes. She could not read them, but she felt their meaning inside her mind. The feeling was warm and kind. It told her not to be afraid, that she was chosen not by chance but by spirit. She felt calm, as if the object was thanking her for listening instead of fearing it. When Aaron returned 2 days later, he carried pictures and samples from the mountain site. They looked almost identical to Mira's discovery. He said he had not touched anything except the cube and that the second object seemed to be in rest mode, waiting for further connection. They placed the cube back near the sphere, and both objects glowed softly again. Aaron said maybe once all the connected objects were activated, a final message or gift would appear, something meant for all humanity. Mira smiled and said they had to be careful and patient. This was not about power or fame. It was about understanding and respect. As the sun set that evening, both of them sat quietly near the glowing surface. The air was calm, and a feeling of harmony filled the backyard. Mira knew the world outside was still unaware of what she had found, but she also knew that soon everything would change. Somewhere far away, beneath another land or ocean, other hidden objects might already be waking up, sending silent signals through the earth and sky. Mira closed her eyes and listened. The same soft humming she had once feared now sounded like music, peaceful, ancient, and full of meaning. She felt certain that the discovery was not the end, but a message of hope waiting to be shared with the entire world. The days passed quietly after Aaron returned from his journey. The small town remained unaware of the great secret hidden beneath Mira's backyard. To the neighbors, she was just living her normal life, but deep below her home rested something that could change the story of humankind. Every morning, Mira would check the silver surface. Sometimes it glowed faintly, and sometimes it remained still as if resting. The cube and the crystal sphere were now connected. They reacted to each other in gentle pulses of light. Arun said it was like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, calm but alive. One morning, Arun arrived with new papers and maps. He had been studying the connection between the glowing points that appeared on the sphere's map. He explained that the pattern formed a perfect ring around the earth, connecting land, ocean, and mountains. Mira listened closely as he said the purpose of that design might be to create balance, a network that could bring harmony to nature and energy. Mira thought deeply about it. She said maybe the visitors who left this behind had tried to protect the planet long ago. Maybe they knew the Earth would need help in the future. Aaron agreed and said the message from the sphere had spoken about unity and peace, not power. He believed the objects were built to help, not harm. That night, the sky was clear and the stars looked brighter than usual. Mira sat outside with Aaron, both watching the silver surface glow softly. The air was calm, and they could feel a quiet energy spreading through the ground. Suddenly, the light from the silver surface began to grow stronger. The blue glow spread outward like ripples in water, covering the whole yard in a gentle shimmer. Mira and Aaron stood up quickly, their hearts beating fast but not in fear. The air felt warm and a low hum filled the space. The cube, which was resting near the sphere, lifted slowly into the air. It floated above the silver surface, spinning slowly. The symbols on it glowed brighter than ever. Arun took a step back, his eyes wide in awe. Then something incredible happened. The light from the silver surface shot upward into the sky, forming a tall beam that reached the stars. It was the same kind of light Mira had seen earlier, but now it was much brighter and steadier. It looked like a signal being sent to somewhere far beyond the earth. Mira whispered softly that maybe the message was being sent back to the ones who made it. Aaron nodded, unable to speak, his eyes still fixed on the glowing beam. The light filled the night sky, and for a moment everything felt still. Even the wind stopped moving. Inside the tunnel, deep beneath the ground, the crystal sphere also began to glow with great intensity. The chamber filled with moving lights showing images once again. Mira and Arun watched as pictures appeared, the tall, graceful beings, their shining cities, and their great ships. Then came new images that neither of them had seen before. The images showed Earth as it looked from space, covered in clouds and light. The voice they had heard earlier returned, calm and clear, echoing through their minds. It spoke with kindness, its tone full of peace. The voice said that the message had finally reached across the stars and that the ancient connection between worlds had been restored. It explained that long ago, their people had planted the knowledge deep within the earth, hoping that one day, the human race would be ready to understand it. It spoke of growth, learning, and harmony. It said that humans had reached the time when they could finally hear the message and use it wisely. Mira felt her eyes fill with tears. The words were simple but full of meaning. Aaron stood beside her, his hands trembling slightly as he listened. The light inside the chamber became softer again, and the voice faded slowly, leaving behind a deep silence that felt peaceful. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. The blue glow still filled the chamber, and the air felt calm. Mira finally said that the message was not just for them, but for everyone. Aaron agreed. He said this discovery belonged to the whole world, not to one person or one country. It was meant to bring people together, not divide them. They decided that it was time to share what they had found, but not through fame or excitement. They wanted to reveal it in a way that protected the truth and kept its purpose pure. Aaron said they would collect all the notes, pictures, and recordings, and prepare a report that explained everything carefully. Over the next few days, they worked hard. Mira organized her notebook while Arun copied the data from his devices. They created detailed drawings of the symbols and maps. When they were done, they sat together and read everything from beginning to end. It felt unreal that the journey had started with a strange noise in Mira's backyard and had led to a discovery that could change how humanity saw the universe. One evening, as they were finishing their work, the silver surface began to glow again. This time it did not show maps or symbols. Instead, it showed two soft lights that formed a shape of two hands touching. Mira smiled and said it was a message of friendship, a final sign of peace between the two worlds. The light grew stronger and then slowly faded away, leaving the surface calm and silent. The blue glow disappeared completely for the first time since Mira had found it. Aaron checked his device and said the energy had stopped flowing. The object had gone into rest mode again. Mira stood quietly, feeling both sadness and happiness. The light was gone, but the message was complete. She knew the object had done its work. It had delivered its story, its wisdom, and its gift. Now it was resting, waiting for the future when someone else might awaken it again. The next morning, Mira and Arun took a long walk through the nearby fields. The sun was warm and the air was filled with the scent of grass and flowers. They talked about everything that had happened, the strange sound, the discovery, the message, and the hope it carried. Aaron said he wanted to dedicate his life to studying the knowledge they had found. He wanted to help people understand that the universe was not empty, but full of life and kindness. Mira smiled and said she would continue to protect the place where it all began. As the days turned into weeks, they shared their findings quietly with a few trusted scientists. They chose people who were open-minded and respectful. Soon, a small team of experts visited Mira's home. They examined the backyard carefully but could not understand how such an object could exist. The material, the energy, and the technology were beyond anything known. When the scientists saw the notes and recordings, they agreed that it was the most important discovery in modern history. Yet they also respected Mira's wish to keep it peaceful and secret until the world was ready. Together, they built a small protective structure around the backyard, keeping it safe for future study. At night, Mira often sat near the window, looking at the stars. Sometimes she thought she could see a faint line of light in the sky, like the same beam that had once risen from her garden. She liked to imagine that somewhere far away, someone was watching and smiling, knowing their message had been received. The world outside continued as usual. People went to work, children played, and life moved on, unaware of the silent wonder sleeping beneath the earth. But Mira knew. She carried the truth in her heart, a truth that spoke of peace, unity, and endless possibilities. One evening, as she watched the sunset with Arun, she said softly that maybe history had already changed, even if people did not know it yet. The message had reached the stars, and the stars had answered. Aaron smiled and said that sometimes the greatest changes happen quietly, through people who simply choose to listen. Mira looked toward the horizon, where the last light of the sun met the edge of the sky. She felt thankful for the strange sound that had called her that night, a sound that had led her to something far greater than she had ever dreamed. And though the silver surface now rested in silence, Mira knew that its message would live on forever, carried by the hearts of those who understood its meaning. That life, no matter where it comes from, is connected by the same light that shines across the stars.